Oh my goodness. I'm really excited, maybe a little nervous today to bring back Tracy Pleschourt. I am going to get coached today. We are diving into this impactful power coaching. So, like, kind of come in, hit it hard, and get out, just to show you all that this can exist and how beneficial it can be for all of our different seasons of life. So, welcome, Tracy.
Thank you, Lindsay. You're so brave.
I do feel brave today because there was a piece of me that I'm like, she can't show, then that'd be okay.
Yeah, I think my clients like fall all over themselves when I share the experience of me, their coach, me being coached by another coach, because it really drives home that everybody, it doesn't matter who you are, can benefit from managing your thoughts and your emotions. If you want a different experience, if you want a different result, if you want to overcome something that you've really been struggling with, managing your emotions that are being created through the thoughts that you're unintentionally thinking is the key. And that goes for absolutely everyone. I don't care who you are. So I'm just teasing you a little bit. I think that it is probably the biggest gift that you could give your audience. So I really commend you for that.
Well, thank you for coming on today. And so, yeah, let's get started. Let's do this.
All right. So give me a circumstance to kind of dive in. We really want to kind of paint the picture of how do people manage their thoughts and their emotions. That sounds like, it sounds a little elusive, like it sounds a little woo-woo. I think if I was just to hear that, I'd be like, what in the world does that mean? And I actually have a methodology for it. So it's something that kind of makes it more tangible. I am such a visual person. So if I can see things in black and white, I have more likelihood of making sense of it and actually progressing through it. So with that being said, give me a circumstance that you might kind of be rumbling with right now.
Okay. And I feel like you and I talked about this, but to make this worthwhile, I'm going to just try to be as transparent as possible, vulnerable as possible. And my current this week, and I think what's going to be fun about Tracy and I getting back together multiple weeks is these circumstances that she's mentioning are going to change. But right now, where I am is I just got off of a 2.5 week vacation with kiddos that we were like, go, go, go. We got back into town. Sports are in full swing. All the school stuff of getting kids signed back up, paperwork done, all of that needs to be done. I'm obviously behind on client stuff because I was out of town for 2.5 weeks. I'm taking on a team manager role for our soccer club teams. And I have a business that I'm running that I'm very passionate about. And it's been really hard for me to go, where does that fit? Because I feel like when that's not fitting appropriately, I'm feeling discombobulated. Like it just feels like all my little pieces are scattering and floating around.
Yeah. Okay. So where I would go first is I like to ask my clients to just really do kind of like a thought download, like a brain dump, basically what you just did for me. But if you guys are listening, you're at home, you're alone, you don't have a life coach or a friend to actually just kind of get all of this out of your head in a verbal way, I would highly recommend writing this down on paper. So exactly what Lindsay did, she just gave me a whole bunch of circumstances. She's going to be managing soccer teams. She's got a business to run. She just got back from vacation. Kids are getting ready to go back to school, and there is an abundance of paperwork from the school and the sports teams that are, necessary. So she's got all sorts of circumstances, and every one of those circumstances probably has like a half a dozen to a half a million thoughts associated with it. Every thought you have generates a feeling in your body, a vibration, an energy that then triggers your behavior. So that's the sequence of events that are happening. There's a circumstance, could be anything. It could be the fact that you are in the midst of, going back to school season and you've got a lot on your plate. Like, you're also a business owner, that you want to take care of your clients, and you are a family member, and you want to make sure that, you know, your extended family knows that you love them and you're thinking of them, right? So there's so many circumstances, but I want you guys to very clearly, like, line item them, get them organized, because in your mind, like, it feels very jumbled. It feels very chaotic when it stays in your mind. So my first piece of advice that I know will make a huge difference for you is just get it out of your head and line item them. Okay. The reason why I want you to do that is because this methodology works so much better to really see what you're creating for yourself from the thoughts that you're having about the circumstance when you can be very specific. So we're going to take just one of those circumstances that you had mentioned, and we're going to really notice how your thinking about that circumstance is making you feel. So which one would you like to tackle, Lindsay?
Oh man, since I feel like I have this time with you, I want to come back to this. I get really back and forth in my head about, is this a season of my life where I'm supposed to lay the business aside and just kind of succumb to the idea that I don't want to miss these last moments of summer. I don't want to, I want to keep showing up as my best self. And does all my time and energy need to stay over there? And then when I catch a glimpse of freedom, of hour of free time, then I'm like, no, I really want to be working. Like, I have so much that I'm excited about and want to be putting into action, that's where I feel like my brain can really go back and forth. The things that are tangible to me are like the soccer managing is going to happen because I've committed. The school stuff, we'll get back to school. Like, all those things that are tangible aren't as much of a problem. It's more the floating for my
Yeah.
wants. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really like, you could like look at a calendar and say the circumstance is like these, you know, this last month of summer, right? Is that kind of where what you're kind of grappling with? Okay. So let's just use the month of August. And because this is obviously going to be repeated, we're probably going to live out a whole lot of Augusts in the rest of our life. And although our kids get older, you know, there are certain things that go along with summer that start to kind of pull us away from business. And of course, we're going to have those kind of thoughts like, should I be doing this for my business, or should I be doing this with my family? So if you just take the month of August, you're having thoughts like, I don't know if I should, what was it? You said, I don't know if I should just kind of throw my hands up and just kind of
come to, this is just not the right time in my life to be worrying about X, about business. Yes.
Yeah. So is this the time, or this is the time, like, that your primitive brain. So I like to teach that we have two parts of our brain. We have the primitive part of our brain that is meant to keep us safe. It's all about like survival. It seeks pleasure, it avoids pain, and it is very efficient when it comes to our thoughts. It thinks the same thoughts over and over and over and over and over. It's a well-driven neural pathway. Okay. That's our primitive brain. And without any sort of awareness that we are reacting from primitive brain thoughts, we will continue to do that. That is the part of our brain that is just by default in control without awareness. So the methodology that I teach, the very first step is just creating awareness as to how it is that the thought, the primitive brain thought, the fear-based thought is making you feel. So your fear-based thought is, should I just succumb to all of the, you know, personal needs and put the business kind of on the shelf for the month? Is that accurate?
It's totally accurate. I call it, life support. Put the business on life support.
Okay, here's where I really want to drive home the point of how dramatic our primitive brain is. Here, Lindsay, she's using words like succumb and life support. right? It's so dramatic. And that's what our primitive brain does. That doesn't mean anything about Lindsay. It is just a function of our primitive brain. I want everybody who's listening to think about that. Think about how dramatic your thoughts get when you're not actively managing them, when you're actually not even aware. It's like very subconscious. So if we really weren't talking about this, Lindsay would have no awareness whatsoever of how dramatic her thoughts are on the month of August. Like, how benign is the month of August? Pretty benign, but look at the thoughts that we're having. Life support, I'm going to succumb to this. So it's all good. And I love to just kind of be playful around it because it doesn't have to be so serious. Let's just like see what it is that our primitive brain is doing so we can kind of get a hold of it and not let it run the show. So you're having those very dramatic thoughts that make you feel what? When you're thinking, should I just succumb to the personal desires, needs, and put the business on life support? How does that make you feel?
So it transfers, but I would say words that come to mind, sometimes a little defeated, or I can go the woe is me route of I don't have that time for me right now, which I know that'll come back.
Okay, so you're
chaos,
feeling defeated. You feel defeated. And then now here's the next step. So if you can see, if you're watching this on video, you can see that this, if we were to fill in this, this model, this formula, the circumstance that we'd fill in is just the month of August. And then Lindsay's having a thought, the T stands for thought, that I should succumb to the personal demands and put the business on life support, which makes her feel defeated. The F stands for feeling. Now we want to see what kind of behavior, how do you show up when you're feeling defeated? So the R stands for reaction. When you are operating from your primitive brain, you're very reactive. It's very knee-jerk. There is no looking at data to make decisions. You're operating from a very dramatic place. All of your reactions typically are coming from a drama-based thought. Okay, so when you're feeling defeated, how do you show up? What would I see if I was a fly on the wall?
Yeah, here's the vulnerable part is I'm very like high and low at the moment. Like when things are going fine, they're going great, right? But the second they're not, I'm normally a really even-keeled person and I've been very snappy with my children. And I have to like take a back seat and go, hang on a second, where is that coming from?
What about like self-care? Is there any self-care going on?
I know, little, like, and again, an area that I'm normally better about and I can tell like even my husband was throwing out more events that people are leaving. We need to show up to this. We have a concert, like when everything doesn't sound fun anymore. And I literally couldn't listen to the conversation with him. I was like, I need to go. We'll talk about this later. And all he was doing was throwing out fun events. So I was like, okay.
Yeah. So you find yourself kind of like starting to disengage and not communicate. You start like probably worrying about future events, looking backwards and like worrying about things that maybe you did, or you should have done. Often we'll look to the future, we'll start catastrophizing. I mean, the list goes on and on. You said lack of self-care, you said high highs, low lows. Like, isn't it interesting to see how we show up when we have this awareness around the feeling of defeat and how we react from that? Like, it's fascinating to know that the only reason I'm reacting this way is because I'm feeling defeated, because I'm having this primitive brain thought that the personal demands have gotten so big that I need to put the business on life support. So you can deduct that it is a thought that's creating your experience. And what would you say if you had to sum it all up? What would you say you're creating for yourself when you're having those high highs, low lows, when you start to disengage with a husband, when you have kind of the negative self-talk, you stop taking care of yourself, stop communicating, get snippy, what do you create for yourself?
Your own misery. Yeah, I guess is like a quick way to summarize it. It's unnecessary.
Yeah, you kind of put yourself on life support, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you can see that, when you can see how your thought business has to be put on life support because the personal demands have gotten too big, you can see that you start creating an experience where you're on life support. You are just being super reactive. It is like this rinse and repeat, feels like it's never ending. You're just reacting. You don't really even get the opportunity to be proactive. It's just this very reactive type nature, which I think you summed it up beautifully by saying, like, it feels like I'm on life support.
Yeah.
So this is the point where when you have that awareness as to why you're feeling the way you're feeling, why you're being snippy, why you're disengaging, how you're actually creating this experience. This is, I think, the most beautiful way to not make it mean anything about you, not to compound the suffering and think that you're broken. It's just purely science. This is what you are supposed to be doing when you do not manage your primitive brain. Your primitive brain is very dramatic. It is meant to be dramatic because it keeps you from walking in front of buses, right? It's like you're going to die if you take a step in front of that moving bus. So it has a purpose. But the fact of the matter is we're not in a lot of danger right now, and it is still being super dramatic. So we don't want to react to it. But I want to make the point that it's never going to go away. It's always going to be there. What you want to do is not react to it. You want to respond to it. And that takes intention. Okay. And it's very difficult to create new sustainable results for ourselves without this level of awareness that we just created for you. Okay. So do you understand why you're feeling defeated?
Yes.
It's from a what?
It is from a feeling of all of these to-dos and my business is on life support. So therefore I'm on life support, but they're all feelings.
Yes. So the feeling of defeat is coming from the thought that you are unintentionally having. That sounds like there's so many personal demands right now. I have to put the business on life support. Okay. That thought, that very dramatic thought, is what's creating that feeling of defeat that has you showing up being really reactive. Okay. So it would make sense when we're being intentional, once we have that awareness, that we can start poking holes in that thought, that there's so many personal demands that we have to put the business on life support. That's where we would go with that, because we know it's a primitive brain thought. Most primitive brain thoughts aren't even true. They are meant to sound very dramatic. And we can start to poke holes and find a truth. And hear me when I say this, find a truth that we believe that makes us feel different. So one thing you said to me before we started the recording was, next time we talk, there'll be different circumstances. Everything's changing so fast. And here's what I'm going to leave you guys with is, we aren't in the business of trying to change circumstances. Like, that would actually put me out of business. I want people to understand that circumstances are, for the most part, out of your control. They are facts. They are things that exist outside of us. The reason why we feel anything about a circumstance is because we're having a thought about it. And that is such good news, because we do have control over our thinking once we have an awareness of how the unintentional thinking is creating an experience that we don't like. Okay. So all of your listeners, I would recommend listening to this a couple times because, and really kind of draw it out. I know because I'm so visual, I need to see the kind of methodology behind this, but this is everything. This is literally everything. Everything you are creating in your life that you don't want or don't like, you have the choice, you have the power to change it. You just have to have an awareness first and foremost. And that's what we spent the time on today, was creating awareness around why Lindsay is feeling defeated. When you understand that is coming from a thought that she's got control over, once she's aware of it, that it's even existing, now she can change it. She could choose to think, you know, this is an August that happens to have a lot of, personal demands, and it doesn't mean anything. Business, I have created a business that can sustain itself for 30 days if necessary. See how less dramatic that is, and how that will definitely make you, that thought, and that's my thought, you're going to have an iteration of that's going to make you feel something different than being defeated. And when you feel something different than being defeated, you're going to show up doing different, which will for sure create a different experience in your life. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I feel like it's the shoulders down, it's the settling in. And I always feel that way. It's almost like once a decision is made, something clicks in, and then you just move forward. Yeah. And it's what we were talking about, of pulling all the thoughts and putting them on paper and feeling that I'm going to settle into, I have 2 weeks and I have a couple other ideas written down with the thought process changing, as well as what are things that are in my control that I can take action where it will just help even 5%. So,
yeah. So how does that thought feel? That I already know a couple things that I can do that's going to make me feel more in control. That's a thought. That's not an action. That's not a feeling. That's a thought. How does that thought make you feel?
Yeah, calm.
Yeah. And see how different that is from I've got so many demands and need to put the business on life support. See how different those two thoughts make you feel? Crazy, huh?
Crazy. Yes.
Yeah. And so my recommendation is just to notice every single time you start to feel that level of defeat. And I want you to remind yourself, I always joke with my clients, tattoo it on your wrist if you need to. I have a choice. I don't have to think that way. That's an unintentional thought. It doesn't mean anything about me. That's just my silly little primitive brain trying to keep me safe. But I'm going to be intentional with my thinking so that I feel different. Make sense?
So good. So good. We're so lucky to have you today. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And for our listeners, just knowing Tracy and I are going to continue to do this, and you get to plug in while you listen to Tracy and I talk and me get coached. You plug in what you would be thinking, what your thought is, your awareness is, because you can get coached at the same time I'm getting coached if you're plugging in while she's asking me the questions. So this really could be beneficial. Show up with your journal, your pen and paper, and let's learn together. So again, thank you, Tracy.
You're so welcome. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good.